The monitor was flatlining in front of me, and the hospital's CFO was trying to get a crying mother to sign a donation pledge with a pen that still had the cap on. Not because he was being polite, because he didn't want her to notice the second page. And when I realized what that second page actually did, how it would turn her child's treatment into a lifetime of debt, I didn't raise my voice. I did something colder. I reached over, flipped the page in front of everyone and said, "If you sign this, you'll owe them money even if your child dies." The nurse froze. The mother's hand stopped shaking mid-air. The CFO's smile held for half a second, like a mask glued to his face. And then it cracked. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just a hospital fundraising event. It was a factory. A factory that manufactured miracles for donors and manufactured traps for families. And I was standing in the middle of it. Comment where you're watching from, because I promise you, what started as a clean 24-hour charity challenge ended with a boardroom raid, a hidden spreadsheet, and a man in a suit trying to sprint down a sterile hallway like he could outrun his own paper trail. Let me back up. I'm a billionaire. I'm also the kind of person who has learned that the word philanthropy is often used like perfume, sprayed on top of something that still stinks underneath. I donate, yes. I fund hospitals, scholarships, shelters, emergency response. But I don't just write checks and pose for photos anymore. I build challenges, experiments with simple rules, because systems reveal themselves under pressure. I call it backstage justice. The public sees the final reveal. The staff sees the protection. The people getting squeezed see someone finally watching the right things. The rule is always simple and visual. This time it was 24 hours. Every dollar donated to the Pediatric Care Fund gets matched, double, until we hit the target. If the hospital hits it cleanly, I pay off every pediatric family's outstanding balance on file. Stakes. Money, reputation, and time. Real time. A ticking clock donors could see on a screen. Emotion. Kids. Parents. Those hallways where the air feels heavy even when it smells like disinfectant. Obstacle. Bureaucracy. Greed. And the kind of cruelty that wears a badge and calls itself policy. The hospital was called St. Leora Children's, not the real name. But the kind of place you see on billboards, smiling doctors, hopeful taglines, a big glass atrium with sunlight that tries to convince you everything is okay. I had funded them before, not directly through their main foundation, but through a separate program that supplied mobile clinics to rural areas. That program had been clean, tight accounting, great outcomes. So when their advancement office, fundraising, approached my team with a pitch for a 24-hour match, I liked it. It was simple. It was measurable. It could go viral in a good way because people love a countdown with a real payoff. And I'll admit it, I like the idea of paying off families' balances. Medical debt is one of the quietest forms of punishment in the world. It turns survival into shame. But I have rules. I don't do anything major without a backstage plan. So my operations lead, Mara, ran the hospital through our filters, financial audits, board composition, vendor relationships, patient advocacy complaints, billing litigation, whistleblower reports, staff turnover, a whole constellation of signals. Nothing screamed, "Run." Some things whispered. A few unusual transfers to a consulting firm with a vague name. A high number of financial assistance denials compared to similar pediatric hospitals. A billing department that had more complaints than the ER. But those can be explained by incompetence, not malice. And I always prefer to assume incompetence until evidence forces me otherwise, so we agreed. We structured the challenge with safeguards. Every donation had to flow into a restricted fund with third-party oversight. Transparent ledger, time-stamped receipts. Donors could see total match remaining. The payoff family's balances clause would be executed by my foundation directly, not routed through the hospital. We would request anonymized account numbers, verify legitimacy through an independent auditor, and then pay balances to the hospital with strict conditions. No rebilling, no retroactive charges, no administrative fees that magically appear after the fact. Also, we set worker and patient protections. No patient stories used without explicit consent, no filming in treatment areas without clearance, no press access to vulnerable families unless they volunteered and had a patient advocate present. And because hospitals are pressure cookers, we had a safety plan for staff, no forced overtime for nurses because donors wanted extra content, no PR team harassing doctors for sound bites while they're saving lives. We weren't coming in as heroes. We were coming in as observers with resources. The kickoff was scheduled for a Friday at noon, a big event in the atrium, donor wall, countdown screen, local press, a string quartet, because someone, somewhere, believes violin music makes money fall from pockets. I arrived at 10 a.m. for pre-briefing. The CEO greeted me first, warm smile, sharp eyes. He had the kind of charisma that makes you trust him until you realize he's never said anything specific. "Thank you for doing this," he said, shaking my hand. "You're changing lives." "Let's make sure it's the right lives," I replied with a light smile. He laughed politely like he didn't understand the joke. Then I met the CFO. His name was Halden. Again, not real. But his energy is real. You know the type. He didn't smile with his face, he smiled with his mouth only, like a drawer opening and closing. "Mr. he said, and he used my last name like it was an investment. "Call me what everyone calls me," I said. He blinked. "And that is?" "The guy who reads the fine print," I said. A flicker crossed his eyes. Too quick, but it was there. He recovered. "Of course, transparency is our highest value." I've heard that sentence from too many people who later asked me to sign something real quick. We walked the route, atrium stage, donor lounge, media corner, and then the pediatric wing, where a few families, carefully screened and consenting, would share brief stories. The CEO wanted me to meet a special mother. That phrase always makes my spine stiffen, because it often means we found someone desperate enough to cry on camera. I said, "Only if she wants to meet, no pressure." "Of course," the CEO said too quickly. "She wants to thank you." We went upstairs. The pediatric wing was quieter than the atrium, the lighting softer, the walls painted with cartoon animals that try their best against reality. I saw nurses moving fast, but trying not to look rushed. That particular walk, efficient, controlled, like they're carrying urgency inside their ribs. A social worker led us into a small family room, and there she was, the mother. Her name was Lena, not real. But again, the way she held herself is real. Her hands were folded tight, like she was trying to keep herself from falling apart in front of strangers. Her son, Matteo, was sitting in a chair beside her, pale and brave. He had a hospital bracelet and the kind of eyes that have seen too many ceilings. The CEO introduced us like we were at a networking lunch. "This is Lena," he said, "and this is Matteo. They're going to share their story at noon." Lena stood quickly, too quickly, like she'd been trained. "Thank you," she said, voice shaking. "Thank you for helping." I sat down so I wouldn't tower over her. "Hi, Matteo," I said gently. "I hear you're the strongest guy here." Matteo gave a small shrug that was half shy, half exhausted. Lena tried to smile, but her eyes were wet. I looked at the social worker. "Is she comfortable doing this?" I asked, calm, direct. The social worker hesitated. That hesitation told me more than any answer. Lena said quickly, "It's okay. They said it helps. If people see," they said, I repeated softly. The CEO's smile stayed in place. I nodded. You don't owe anyone your pain, I said to Lena. If you want to speak, you speak. If you don't, you don't. Either way, the match happens. Lena blinked like she didn't believe I meant it. The CEO cleared his throat. We can discuss logistics later, he said. I smiled politely. We can discuss consent now, I replied. The CEO's eyes tightened, but he nodded. Lena's shoulders dropped slightly like someone had loosened a rope. We chatted for a few minutes, nothing heavy. I asked Matteo what he liked. He said space. He liked planets. He liked black holes. He liked things that swallowed everything. Ironic considering. When we left, I told Mara quietly, keep an eye on that mother. Mara nodded. Already flagged. At 11:20 a.m., Mara pulled me into the donor lounge, which had pastries arranged like art and chairs too expensive for anyone to sit comfortably. What is it? I asked. Mara held up a tablet. On it was a screenshot of a hospital form. Financial responsibility and donor pledge acknowledgement. 2 pages. The first page looked like a pledge form donors might sign to commit to monthly giving. Harmless. The second page was something else. It was a debt instrument disguised as an acknowledgement, language that said in legal terms that the signer accepted full responsibility for any charges not covered by insurance, assistance, or donations, including administrative adjustments and external processing fees, and that disputes would go to binding arbitration in a jurisdiction that wasn't even our state. It was predatory. It was designed to be signed in emotional moments. And the worst part? The top of the second page had a line, for participating families featured in fundraising communications. Featured. So, families like Lena. I felt heat rise in my chest, controlled, but sharp. Where did you get this? I asked. Mara's voice stayed calm. It was uploaded to the event packet folder, same shared drive the PR team uses. Who uploaded it? I asked. Mara tapped. Billing department liaison, under CFO's chain. My jaw tightened. This was the first real confirmation. Something was wrong, but wrong doesn't always mean criminal. Sometimes it's standard hospital garbage that no one questions because it's been normalized. Still, I have another rule. If a system profits from confusion, it will keep people confused on purpose. I said, we stop any family from signing that. Mara nodded. Already told our patient advocate to intercept anything with that header. Good, I said. Then I asked the bigger question, why now? Mara didn't hesitate. They're using your match as a pressure lever. More publicity, more donors, more featured families, more signatures. My mind started mapping. If you're a hospital with questionable billing practices and a billionaire comes in with a huge match and press, you have 2 incentives. 1, look good. 2, exploit the attention to lock families into paying more. Maybe because you're short on cash. Maybe because you're greedy. Maybe because you're hiding something bigger. I said, we run the event, but we tighten the perimeter. I want real-time auditing on donation inflow. Mara said, already requested access. CFO is resisting. Of course he is. I exhaled slowly. Then we make it public. If it's a transparency event, we're transparent. Mara smiled slightly. You want to pressure him with optics. I want to pressure him with reality, I replied. Noon arrived. The atrium filled. Donors in suits, staff in scrubs, a few families carefully positioned, cameras. The CEO took the stage first, voice booming with practiced sincerity. He thanked donors, praised staff, introduced me like I was an angel in a blazer. I walked up, took the mic, and kept it simple. 24 hours, I said. Every dollar you donate is matched. If the hospital hits the target cleanly, my foundation pays off every pediatric family's outstanding balance on file. Not someday. Immediately after verification. People cheered. I added, And if you're a parent here, you don't have to perform gratitude. You don't owe anyone your story. Your child's health is not content. Understand me? A ripple moved through the staff. Some nurses looked up like they'd been waiting their whole careers to hear that sentence out loud. The CEO's smile tightened again, but he nodded like he agreed, because disagreeing would look evil. The countdown began. A giant screen lit up, $0 raised, $10,000 target. A clock started ticking down from 24 fells. Donations began to pour in. At first, it felt clean. A donor gave $100,000. It doubled. People clapped. A local business pledged $50,000. Doubled. The screen climbed. And then, within 30 minutes, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The numbers were climbing too smoothly. Fundraising doesn't move like that, not organically. It's jagged, big jumps, plateaus, slow drips, surges when someone shares a link. This was a steady slope. Mara saw my face and leaned in. "We're seeing internal transfers," she murmured. "Explain," I said without turning my head. "Some donations are coming from accounts linked to hospital affiliates," she said. "Not donors, shell entities." That's when I realized what the first trap might be. Hospitals sometimes inflate fundraising totals with internal money to create momentum. Seed money, sure. That's not always illegal if disclosed. But if they're doing it to unlock my payoff, paying off balances, that's manipulation. Because my payoff was huge. 10 million in donations matched equals 20 million. And then I pay off balances, which could be another massive amount. If they could fake hitting the target, they could trigger my payout and then redirect it, skim it, bury it in fees. It was starting to look like a layered scam. I kept my face calm. I smiled for cameras. I said the right things. And backstage, my team moved. We had a plan A and plan B. Plan A, assume incompetence, correct quietly, demand transparency, lock down forms. Plan B, assume criminal intent, gather proof, expose publicly at the moment it matters. We weren't at plan B yet, not officially, but my body was. At 3 p.m., Lena was scheduled to speak. Mara and our patient advocate, Juno, went to meet her first. They returned 5 minutes later, faces tight. "What?" I asked. Juno said they told her she has to sign the featured family acknowledgement before she goes on stage. My jaw clenched. "The 2-page form," Juno nodded. Mara added, "They're telling her it's required for privacy compliance." That's a lie. Consent is required, not debt acceptance. I stood. "Take me to her," I said. We walked fast through the corridor. I could feel the energy shift when a man like me moves quickly in a hospital. People notice, not because they care about me, but because money moving fast usually means someone is about to get in trouble. We entered the family room. Lena was standing, trembling. A PR coordinator was there, smiling too wide. A billing liaison held the form on a clipboard. Matteo sat quietly, looking at the floor. The billing liaison said, "We just need your signature, Lena." Lena looked at the pen like it was a weapon. I stepped in. "What is that?" I asked calmly. The billing liaison's smile faltered. "Just a consent form." I held out my hand. "Let me see." He hesitated. That hesitation was enough. I took it. I flipped to page 2. I saw the clauses. I looked at Lena. "Don't sign this," I said gently. The PR coordinator's smile hardened. "Sir, it's standard." "It's predatory," I replied without raising my voice. The billing liaison's cheeks flushed. "She needs to sign for compliance." "No," I said. "She needs to sign a media release if she wants to be on camera. That's it. This is a billing trap." The liaison's eyes darted toward the door, toward power. Lena's eyes filled with tears. "They said, if I don't, they can't help." I knelt slightly so my eyes were level with hers. "They don't get to tie help to debt," I said. "You're not performing for treatment," the PR coordinator snapped. "We are trying to raise money for children like him." And you're trying to charge his mother for the privilege, I said. I turned to Juno. Bring the correct release, I said. Juno nodded and left. The billing liaison tried to take the clipboard back. I held it. Who told you to do this? I asked him, calm. He swallowed. It's policy. Who wrote the policy? I asked. He hesitated again. Then he whispered, CFO's office. I nodded. I handed the clipboard to Mara. Photograph every page, I said quietly. Timestamp, chain of custody. The liaison's eyes widened. You can't. I can, I said, and you're going to explain to your boss why you asked a mother in crisis to sign an arbitration clause. The PR coordinator's face went tight. This is going to delay the program. No, I said. This is going to save her. Juno returned with a simple media release. 1 page. Clear language. No hidden fees, no debt. Lena signed that. Then I asked her, do you still want to speak? Lena looked at Matteo. Matteo looked up, small nod. She inhaled shakily. Yes, she said, but I want to say it my way. Good, I said. Say it your way. At 3:10 p.m., Lena stood on the atrium stage. She didn't cry on cue. She didn't perform gratitude like a trained animal. She said, voice trembling but steady, I'm here because my son is fighting. And I want him to have a future where families don't have to beg. Please donate if you can, but don't forget, we're people, not stories. The room went quiet. Some donors shifted uncomfortably. Some staff looked like they were holding back tears. The CEO clapped first, a little too loud, trying to reclaim control. I watched the CFO from the side. He wasn't clapping. He was watching me. That was the first time I knew he saw me as a threat, not a wallet. At 5 p.m., the donations hit $3.2 million, matched to $6.4 million. The screen kept climbing in that same suspiciously smooth way. Mara came to me with another update. CFO refuses to give our auditor direct access to the restricted fund ledger, she said. What excuse? I asked. Security, she replied. I smiled without humor. Security is always the excuse for secrecy. Mara nodded. We're pulling public donation data where possible, but internal transfers are muddy. I looked around the atrium. Cameras, donors, smiling faces. I said quietly, we pivot to Plan B. Mara's eyebrows lifted slightly. She didn't question. She just switched gears. Plan B meant we stopped trying to fix quietly. We documented everything. We baited. We let the system reveal its teeth. At 7 p.m., the CEO hosted a donor dinner in a private hall. I attended because leaving would look suspicious and because sometimes the real conversations happen when people think they're safe behind linen tablecloths. Holden, the CFO, sat across from me. He raised a glass. To generosity, he said. I raised mine. To accountability, I replied. His mouth tightened. He leaned forward slightly, voice low. We're grateful you chose our hospital. I chose the kids, I said. He smiled with his mouth again. Of course. Then he slid something onto the table, a folder, thin, too thin. A small administrative document, he said. It allows our foundation to process the matching funds efficiently. Just a signature. There it was, the signature play. I didn't touch the folder. I smiled. I don't sign things over dinner, I said lightly. Holden chuckled. It's just a formality. I tilted my head. Formalities can wait for daylight and counsel. His eyes flicked toward the CEO, then back to me. If we delay, we risk slowing the momentum, I nodded. Then let momentum prove it's real. Holden's smile held, but his knuckles whitened around his fork. He tried again. You don't need counsel for this. I always need counsel, I said, especially when people tell me I don't. The CEO jumped in, voice smooth. We can handle it tomorrow. Holden's eyes flashed, annoyed that the CEO had backed off. The dinner continued with speeches and applause, and donors praising themselves. I smiled when appropriate, and under the table, Mara texted me, "Found something. Need you now." I excused myself. We moved through a service corridor into the operations room we'd set up, small, quiet, away from patients. Mara pulled up a screen. It was a spreadsheet, not from the restricted fund, from the billing system, a list of pediatric family accounts, columns, account ID, balance, financial aid status, donor feature tag, signature obtained tag, collection pathway, and there, highlighted in red, was a note next to Lena's account. PR feature 3 p.m. Get signature. If resists, delay assistance review. My chest went cold. That's retaliation, I said. Mara nodded. And it ties PR to billing enforcement. That's not just unethical, that's a weapon. How did you get this? I asked. Mara's eyes shifted. A nurse. I paused. A nurse gave you billing data? Mara shook her head quickly. Not patient names, just internal IDs. She was scared. She said the CFO's office has been pushing staff to flag families most likely to pay after being featured. That's how it works. You turn a vulnerable family into a marketing asset and then squeeze them because they're too ashamed to fight. I felt heat rise behind my eyes. I forced it down. Chain of custody? I asked. Mara nodded. We have the nurse's statement recorded privately. We're not using names. We'll route through authorities. But the system exists. I stared at Lena's line. She resisted, I said softly. And we stopped it, Mara replied. But they tried, I said. Yes, Mara said, which means they've done it before. That's when the open loop snapped in my head, the suspiciously smooth donation curve. What if the fundraising was being manipulated not to help kids, but to create cover? If you can say, look at all this money coming in, you can hide money going out. And if you can trigger my payoff, paying off balances, you can route those payments through pathways that benefit someone else. Who benefits? I asked. Mara pointed to another tab. Vendor payments, consulting firm, processing fees, revenue cycle optimization, the same vague firm we'd seen in early vetting, and the amounts? They spiked in the last quarter. They called it optimization, but it looked like extraction. Mara said, we think Halden is routing money through this firm. They get paid a percentage of collections improved, which means the more families they push into paying, the more they earn, I said. Mara nodded. Miracles for donors, I murmured. Traps for families. Mara looked at me. We need the proof that links fundraising totals to those vendor payouts. How? I asked. Mara's lips tightened. We need access to the restricted fund ledger, and Halden won't give it, I said. Not willingly, Mara replied. I stared at the screen, then at the hospital map on the wall. I said, then we catch him doing what he's doing. At 9 p.m., the atrium was quieter. The countdown screen still glowed. $4.8 million raised, matched to $9.6 million. Halden's team was working in a glass-walled office adjacent to the foundation suite. Through the glass, I could see people in business attire, typing, printing, moving folders. My team positioned discreetly, not as threats, as witnesses. We had our attorney on standby. We had an independent auditor ready to receive data. We had a secure device to hash documents, digital fingerprinting, so nothing could be altered later without detection. And we had one more trick. A compliance check-in that Halden had agreed to earlier as part of our partnership agreement. We used it. I walked into the foundation suite with Mara and our auditor, calm and smiling. Halden looked up like he was annoyed we'd interrupted his control room. Everything okay? He asked, voice tight. Great, I said. We're doing the scheduled ledger access check. Halden's smile twitched. Now? Yes, I said. Transparency is the theme, right? He exhaled, forced. Fine. But you'll need to submit a request. Our agreement is the request, Mara said, placing a printed page on the desk. Clause 7.2, real-time audit access during match window. Holden stared at it. He hated being boxed in by paper. He stood. "Follow me," he said. He led us to a terminal. He logged in. He started clicking slowly like he was trying to think his way out of it. Then he stopped and said, "System is undergoing maintenance." I smiled gently. "During the biggest fundraising event of your year?" He shrugged. "It chose the window." Mara's voice stayed calm. "We'll wait." Holden's jaw tightened. "It could take hours." "Good," I said. "We have 24. Holden's eyes flashed. He glanced toward the glass wall, toward his team. He was thinking, then he tried a different angle. "If you don't trust us," he said, voice low, "you can withdraw the match. But that would look bad." The optics threat. He was trying to use the kids as hostage to keep me from questioning. I leaned in slightly. "If you're clean," I said, "this is easy. If you're not, it's going to be expensive." His nostrils flared. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm predicting," I replied. He stared at me for a long moment, then very slowly he said, "Let's not make this adversarial." I smiled. "Then stop hiding the ledger." At 11 p.m., donations hit $6 million, matched to $12 million. The hospital announced on social media that we were on pace to hit 10 million by noon tomorrow. The staff looked exhausted already, nurses still moving, families still waiting, PR still hunting moments. I went up to the pediatric wing again, not to be seen, to see. I found Lena sitting in the same family room, staring at paperwork. Matteo was sleeping now, curled under a blanket. Lena looked up when I entered, startled. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "I wanted to check in. Are you okay?" Lena hesitated, then whispered, "They sent someone." "Who?" I asked. "A man from billing," she said, eyes wide. "He said, if I want help with the balance, I have to meet tomorrow morning." My jaw clenched. "Did he mention signing anything?" Lena nodded slightly. "He said it's just to confirm responsibility." There it was again. The trap persisted. I sat down. "Listen to me," I said gently. "You don't meet alone. If you meet, it's with an advocate. And if anyone pressures you, you tell Juno." Lena's eyes filled. "I'm scared they'll punish us." I nodded, honest. "They might try, but you're not alone." She swallowed. "Why are they doing this? Isn't the hospital supposed to help?" I stared at the floor for a second, choosing my words. "Some people turn help into a business," I said, "and then they forget it's people." Lena's voice broke. "Matteo is not a business." "I know," I said softly. "That's why I'm here." When I left the room, a nurse approached me in the hallway, middle-aged, tired eyes, calm anger. She didn't give her name. She just said, "Thank you for stopping that form." I nodded. "How long has it been happening?" I asked quietly. Her lips pressed. "Years." My chest tightened. She looked around, then lowered her voice. "They call it standardization. They push families to sign when they're exhausted. They tell staff it's policy. If you question, you get scheduled less." I nodded slowly. She added, "Holden, he's not just numbers, he's fear." I held her gaze. "If we expose it, will staff speak?" I asked. Her eyes hardened. "If we're protected." "You will be," I said. She studied me like she was deciding whether to believe. Then she nodded once and walked away. At midnight, I did a 2-sentence recap in my head because the night was long and I needed the spine of the story. We launched a 24-hour pediatric donation match that was supposed to fund care and erase medical debt. But the hospital's CFO was pressuring featured families to sign hidden financial traps while blocking access to the restricted fund ledger. We stopped one mother from being coerced, found internal billing notes that tied PR exposure to collection pressure, and realized the fundraising numbers might be manipulated to trigger a payout that could be siphoned through vendor optimization fees. At 1 a.m., Halden made his move, not on me, on the staff. He sent an email, urgent, to nurse managers, asking them to identify families who may benefit from expedited financial counseling and to ensure required acknowledgements are completed to maintain compliance. In plain language, push signatures. Mara intercepted it because we had a consented monitoring arrangement for event-related comms. She showed it to me. "This is him escalating," she said. "Because he's losing control," I replied. "Or because the next phase is time-sensitive," Mara said. I stared at the countdown clock. 11 hours left. "What happens at 10 million?" I asked. Mara answered quietly. "Your foundation triggers debt payoff. And he wants to structure it so he profits," I said. Mara nodded. "We need proof before then." "How do we force his hand?" I asked. Mara looked at the hospital map again. Then she pointed at a room labeled Revenue Cycle War Room. "That's where they're tracking collections and vendor metrics live," she said. "If he's routing anything, it's there." "Can we access it legally?" I asked. Mara's face stayed calm. "Only if we're invited." I smiled slightly. "Then we get invited." At 7 a.m., I requested a financial alignment meeting with Halden. He agreed, likely thinking he could charm or intimidate. We met in a conference room with a glass wall overlooking the city. Morning light made everything look clean. Halden arrived with 2 assistants and a binder. I arrived with Mara, our attorney, and our independent auditor. Halden's smile tightened. "This seems excessive." "It's proportional," I replied. He sat, opened his binder, and slid a document toward me. "There's been some confusion," he said smoothly. "This clarifies roles. It grants our foundation authority to administer your payoff payments to families." I didn't touch it. Our attorney did. She skimmed. Her eyes didn't change, but her voice did. "This includes an administrative processing fee of 12%. Halden smiled. "Standard." I laughed once. 12% on pediatric debt payoff is not standard. It's theft with nicer font." Halden's smile vanished. "We have costs." "You have children," I replied, still calm. He leaned back, eyes cold now. "If you don't trust us, perhaps you should reconsider." My auditor cut in, voice polite. "We require ledger access to validate funds and ensure proper restriction compliance." Halden's jaw tightened. "I told you, maintenance." Mara slid a printout across the table. It was an IT ticket log, no maintenance scheduled. Halden stared. His face didn't flush, but a vein in his temple pulsed. Mara said softly, "We know you're blocking access." Halden's voice sharpened. "This is a hospital. We don't have time for your games." I leaned forward slightly. "Then stop playing yours," I replied. Halden stared at me. Then he did something I didn't expect. He smiled again, but this time it was genuine. Not because he was happy, because he thought he'd found leverage. "You're here for optics," he said quietly. "Your brand, your image. If this turns into a scandal, you lose." I held his gaze. "If this turns into a scandal," I said, "children lose." Halden shrugged. "Then protect your image by signing the administrative agreement. We handle it." Smooth. There it was. He was offering me the classic deal. Let the machine run, and I can walk away looking good. That's how bad systems survive. Not through villains shouting, through compromises whispered. I smiled slightly. "No," I said. Halden's eyes narrowed. "Then you're choosing chaos." "I'm choosing truth," I replied. He leaned forward, voice low. "Do you know what happens if you pull your match? Staff get blamed, families get hurt. You'll be the billionaire who played savior and ran." "I'm not pulling the match," I said calmly. Halden blinked. "Then what are you doing?" I stood. "I'm finishing it," I said. "And you're going to show your ledger, either voluntarily or through a subpoena." Halden's face hardened. You don't have jurisdiction here. My attorney's voice was calm. We have contractual rights, and we have documented attempted coercion of families and concealment of restricted fund data. Holden's assistants shifted uncomfortably. Holden stared at me with pure hatred now. Fine, he said through his teeth. Come to the war room, I'll show you. Mara's eyes flicked to mine. This was the invitation. We followed him. The revenue cycle war room was exactly what it sounded like. A space designed to turn human beings into numbers. Screens on the wall with metrics, collections rates, denials, yield. On one screen, I saw the fundraising total ticking up. On another, I saw something that made my stomach twist again. Projected collections lift from featured families, plus 118%. They had a whole model. A model that predicted how much more money they could extract from families after parading them in front of donors. It wasn't just a few bad forms, it was a strategy. Holden stood in front of the screens like a general. Here, he said. You want transparency? Watch. He clicked into the restricted fund ledger, and for the first time I saw the inflows. The donations that looked smooth were indeed coming from internal accounts, hospital affiliates moving money in circles to create momentum. Technically permissible if disclosed, but the disclosures buried. Then I saw the outflows, and my blood went cold. Vendor disbursements scheduled the moment the fundraising hit certain thresholds, consulting firm payouts labeled performance fee. Performance fee for what? For collections improved, meaning if they hit 10 million, the firm got a bonus. And that firm connected to Holden personally through a silent partnership agreement. Mara had suspected. Now we had proof. My attorney's voice was quiet, but lethal. This is a conflict of interest. Holden's face stayed composed, but his eyes flicked. It's disclosed, he said quickly. Our auditor leaned in. Where? Holden clicked, moved fast, opened a document that looked like a disclosure, but Mara's hand went up. Stop, she said. Holden froze. Mara said softly, why are the timestamps inconsistent? Holden's jaw tightened. Mara pointed. This disclosure was uploaded yesterday, meaning he backfilled it when he realized we were watching. Holden's mask finally slipped. You people, he snapped, don't understand how hard it is to run a hospital. I held his gaze. Then don't run it like a casino, I replied. Holden's voice rose. Without aggressive collections, we shut down. Then explain why you're personally profiting, I said, still calm. Holden's nostrils flared. Then he did something that confirmed he was guilty beyond repair. He reached for the keyboard and tried to delete the file. Mara moved faster. She slammed her palm on the desk, yanking the network cable out of the terminal. The screen froze. Holden's eyes went wide. My attorney said, calm, do not alter records. Holden stood abruptly, chair screeching. You can't just... Mara held up a small device, a hardware write blocker and a secure drive. We already mirrored the session, she said softly. Every click, every file. Hash verified. Holden's face went pale. He looked at the door, and that's when he ran. Yes, the CFO ran. He bolted out of the war room like a man who thought speed could erase spreadsheets. My security team, who had been positioned discreetly, not threatening, shifted into motion. Not to tackle him, to document him, to ensure he didn't reach patient areas, to prevent destruction of records. He sprinted down the hallway, shoes squeaking on polished hospital floors, a sound so absurd it almost made me laugh. Almost. He reached the foundation suite. He yanked open a cabinet. He grabbed a stack of folders. He turned and saw my security and froze. He tried to shove the folders into a trash bin. Mara's voice cut through, calm and loud. Do that, and you'll be recorded destroying evidence. Holden's hands trembled. He looked around like a trapped animal. Then he hissed, You can't prove anything. I stepped forward, not close enough to intimidate, but close enough to be heard. "Halden," I said calmly, "you tried to coerce mothers to sign debt traps during a charity match. You blocked ledger access, you backdated disclosures. You attempted to delete files. That's not mismanagement, that's intent." His lips curled. "You're a billionaire playing hero." I nodded slightly. "And you're a CFO playing predator." His face contorted with rage. Then he lunged toward a side door. Security blocked it without touching him, just stepping into place. He stopped, breathing hard. And then, for the first time, he looked scared. Not because of me, because he realized the machine he controlled was now watching him back. At 11:30 a.m., with 30 minutes left before the 24-hour match ended, the fundraising total hit $9.7 million. The atrium was buzzing. Donors were excited. Staff were exhausted. PR was pushing for the final push. The CEO found me near the stage, face tight. "What is happening?" he hissed. I looked at him. "Your CFO is profiting from collections and manipulating fundraising," I said quietly. His eyes widened. "That's impossible." I held up my phone and showed him one screenshot. The vendor performance fee scheduled at the 10 million threshold, tied to Halden's conflict of interest. The CEO's face went gray. "This will destroy us," he whispered. I kept my voice calm. "No," I said. "It will clean you, if you let it." The CEO swallowed. "What do you want?" "I want you to protect the families and staff," I said. "And I want the truth to be public before they spin it." The CEO looked toward the cameras. "If we go public, donors panic." "Good," I replied. "Let them panic about the right thing." At 11:55 a.m., we set the stage for the climax. Not the dramatic kind with shouting, the undeniable kind with evidence. Mara positioned our auditor at the donor screen control. Our attorney positioned herself near the mic. Juno was upstairs with Lena, ensuring she wasn't being cornered by billing. My security kept Halden contained in the foundation suite with legal oversight, not detained physically, but prevented from accessing records unsupervised. The CEO stepped up to the stage, pale. He took the mic. His voice shook slightly. "I need everyone's attention," he said. "We have discovered serious irregularities in our billing and fundraising administration." The atrium went quiet, like someone had cut the oxygen. Murmurs started. The CEO continued, "We are pausing all signature-based financial counseling related to this campaign. We are initiating an independent investigation, and we will cooperate fully with authorities." Donors stared. Staff froze. PR people looked like they wanted to evaporate. Then the CEO turned toward me, eyes pleading. I stepped up, I took the mic, and I did something I rarely do. I let my anger show, not as screaming, but as clarity. "I came here for kids," I said, "and I found a system that was using kids as leverage." You could hear a pin drop. I continued, "This campaign was meant to raise funds for care and erase pediatric medical debt. That's still what it will do. But I will not allow any hospital administrator to turn a charity moment into a debt trap for families." Then I held up the 2-page form. I didn't wave it like a prop. I held it like evidence. "This," I said, "was presented to families featured in fundraising communications. Page 1 looks like consent. Page 2 locks them into arbitration and adds processing fees that can follow them even after tragedy." Gasps. A donor near the front whispered, "What?" I kept going. We stopped multiple families from being pressured to sign this during the match window. We also identified vendor performance fees tied to fundraising thresholds and collection increases. The CEO swallowed hard beside me. I added, "To protect patients, we will not display private account details, but our independent auditor has confirmed record preservation, and authorities will receive full documentation." Then I said the sentence I knew would restore trust while still holding the line. The match continues, the payoff continues, and my foundation will pay off pediatric balances directly after verification, without letting anyone take a cut. The atrium erupted in confused noise, some applause, some shouting, some donors demanding answers. I raised a hand. "Listen," I said steady. "If you donated because you care about kids, keep caring. If you donated because you wanted a pretty story, you're about to get an ugly truth. But the kids don't lose because adults got greedy." At exactly noon, the screen ticked to 10,000, 12,140. Target hit. Cheers tried to happen, but they died halfway in throats, because now everyone knew the celebration had teeth. I stepped away from the mic and looked at Mara. Mara nodded once. We had the threshold. Now we had leverage. Because now, if anyone tried to obstruct the payoff, it would be public. At 12:10 p.m., we moved upstairs. This is where the cold open returns, the part I started with. Billing had scheduled Lena's financial counseling meeting for noon, exactly when the match ended, thinking chaos would cover coercion. They tried anyway. Juno texted, "They're here with forms. Come." I walked fast with Mara and our attorney. We entered the small consultation room. Lena was sitting, pale. Matteo was in a wheelchair beside her, sleepy. A billing manager and a man from Holden's office stood with a clipboard. The billing manager smiled too wide. "We just need Lena to acknowledge responsibility so we can apply charitable credits." I held out my hand. "Let me see." He hesitated. I took the clipboard. I saw it, the same two-page trap. And that's when I said the line that froze the room. "If you sign this, you'll owe them money even if your child dies." The billing manager's face drained. "That's not..." "It is," my attorney said calmly. "And presenting it now, after the hospital publicly announced irregularities, is reckless." Lena's hands trembled. "I thought it was help." I knelt slightly, voice gentle. "It's not," I said, "and you're not signing anything today." The man from Holden's office tried to step forward. "Sir, you don't understand." I looked at him. "I understand perfectly," I said. "You're trying to lock her in before the investigation." Mara held up her phone, recording. The man's eyes flicked. He swallowed and stepped back. The billing manager stammered, "We were told this is required." My attorney's voice stayed calm. "Who told you?" The manager hesitated, then whispered, "Halden." I nodded. "Of course," I murmured. I turned to Lena. "Your balance will be handled through our process," I said. "No signatures, no traps. Juno stays with you." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. I shook my head slightly. "Don't thank me for stopping something that should never exist," I said gently. "Just stay with your son." When we left the room, Mara exhaled hard. "They still tried," she said. "Because predators don't stop when they're caught," I replied. "They stop when they're removed." At 1 p.m., authorities arrived. Not in a dramatic raid with flashing lights. Hospitals aren't movie sets, and patient care comes first. But they came with calm seriousness. The board was notified. The CEO cooperated. Holden was separated from systems access immediately. He tried to claim it was all standard revenue cycle practice. Then, Mara's mirrored session and hash-verified documents made that argument collapse. Because standard practice doesn't include backdating disclosures and trying to delete evidence. Over the next week, the story tried to mutate in the press. Some outlets wanted to frame it as billionaire accuses hospital. I refused that narrative. I made one statement: this is about children and families. My foundation will ensure pediatric balances are cleared and patient advocacy protections are strengthened. Hospital staff who spoke up will be supported. Behind the scenes, we did the real work. We set up an independent patient debt relief pipeline. The hospital provided anonymized account IDs and balances for pediatric families, audited by a third party. We matched those IDs to payments without collecting names, preserving privacy. We issued payments directly to the hospital with strict conditions. Balances reduced to zero, no rebilling, no new administrative fees, and written confirmation to families. We also funded a patient advocacy office, independent from billing, with authority to intervene if families were pressured. And we opened a hotline for staff to report coercion, protected, legally shielded. Because this wasn't about one CFO, it was about a culture that let him exist. 12 days later, Lena came to a meeting, not for press, not for gratitude performance, for closure. She sat in a small conference room with Juno beside her. Matteo was there too, wearing a hoodie with a planet on it. He looked better, not cured, but brighter. Lena held a letter in her hands. The hospital's confirmation. Pediatric balance cleared. She stared at it like it might evaporate. "I keep waiting," she whispered, "for another bill." I nodded. "That's trauma," I said softly. "Bills as threats." Matteo looked up at me. "Are black holes real?" he asked suddenly. I blinked, then smiled. "Very real," I said. "But you know what else is real?" He tilted his head. "People who fight back," I said. Matteo stared for a second, then gave a small smile. Lena's eyes filled. "Thank you," she whispered again. This time I let her, because she wasn't thanking me for stopping a form. She was thanking me for restoring a sliver of safety in a world that had tried to charge her for breathing. Before she left, Lena looked at me and said, "I almost signed." I nodded. "That's the design," I said. She swallowed. "How many people signed before me?" I didn't lie. "Enough," I said, "but not anymore." She nodded slowly, then stood. Matteo waved awkwardly. They left, and when the door closed, Mara exhaled. "We did it," she said quietly. I shook my head. "We started it," I replied. "Now we make sure it doesn't happen again." Because that's the thing about justice. It can't be a moment. It has to be a system. 3 months later, St. Leora Children's had a new interim CFO and a restructured billing oversight committee that included patient advocates with real authority. They also had a new rule. No family could be featured in fundraising without an independent advocate present, and no financial document could be presented in the same session as media consent. Small rule, massive impact. Holden. He tried to pivot. He tried to claim he was a scapegoat. He tried to say, everyone does it. Maybe some do, but that doesn't make it okay. And because we had clean evidence, timestamps, mirrored sessions, recorded coercion attempts, backdated disclosures, his defenses didn't stick. The consulting firm's contracts were terminated. Their payment structures were scrutinized. The board had to answer hard questions. Donors demanded accountability instead of just applause. And the staff, those nurses with tired eyes, finally had proof that speaking up could be met with protection, not punishment. I'll leave you with the last twist, because it's the one that still makes my chest tighten. During the investigation, we found a folder in Halden's network drive labeled Miracle Stats. It was a PR document, a curated set of patient outcomes, cherry-picked and polished, used to sell donor confidence. But inside it were internal notes. Feature families with higher balances, higher likelihood of post-feature payments. They weren't just using stories to raise money. They were using stories to raise collections. They were turning hope into a sales funnel. That's why Halden fought so hard for signatures, not because it was policy, because it was profit. So if you're still here, I want you to answer this honestly. Should donors keep giving to institutions when administrators abuse the system? Or should donors redirect to direct aid models that bypass billing departments entirely? Team institution, fix it from inside, or team direct aid, cut the middleman. Pick one and tell me why.